Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Mindful Mondays. Welcome to everybody who's here. We're very grateful that you came back. For those of you who were here 2 weeks ago, and some of you are new and did not make it to our session 2 weeks ago, we're going to read a brief synopsis, and then we'll tell you how it's going to work for tonight, for those, again, who were not here 2 weeks ago. We are focusing Mindful Mondays is something that Ascent by KTPO, our company, has started implementing. We had our first session 2 weeks ago. We're very excited about it. I had great feedback from individuals. And we will be doing this twice a month for the foreseeable future. And we'll take it from there. We'll always love to hear your feedback. You will have an opportunity after the opening and after the discussion about our topic for tonight, which I'm going to mention in a couple minutes. You will have an opportunity to ask questions, to give feedback, to challenge what I'm saying, whatever it is that is on your heart. For those of you who missed our session 2 weeks ago, you will have an opportunity to listen to that recording in the YouTube channel. For those of you who are not here, and even those who you were here, I'm going to give a brief synopsis about what we spoke about 2 weeks ago. Some of you know who I am, some of you do not. My name is Alan Nemtzov. Just a brief synopsis. I'm a registered psychiatric nurse. I'm also a certified health coach and a published author. But more important than all that is what I have done to reach this level. I've maintained a 100-pound weight loss for over 20 years. And in that time, I've discovered the solution, not just to long-term weight loss, but also the effects, the positive effects of what that did to me, well, the negative effect of what it did to me while I was obese, and the transformation, what has happened to me in the last 20 years. We created a program about 6 years ago, started about teaching people how to keep their weight off long term, and it has evolved where we have literally changed people's lives in many aspects. And we started to do this Mindful Mondays to give people an opportunity to understand a little bit more about different concepts of what we do, very unique approach, not just to specifically to weight loss, to anxiety reduction, emotional eating, overeating, but also to different distractions that people go through where they feel stuck in life and they just seem to keep hitting a wall, not knowing where to go, which way to go, how to get out of what they're feeling stuck. And we started talking 2 weeks ago about relationships. That was our topic for our previous Mindful Mondays, and also for tonight's will be part B. So just to give a brief synopsis, and if you know this already, there's nothing wrong with hearing it again. I'm not going to go into extent. We talked about two different aspects of relationships. We have, first of all, and I just want to add one last thing. We do ask that you do stay muted out of respect to other individuals. When we get to the Q&A, well, you'll have an opportunity to unmute and to respond, to ask questions, or as I said, to challenge or to ask to, if you miss something, you want to understand it, you will have that opportunity to do it then. Until then, we do ask that you just keep note of your question. Also, I do recommend that you take notes on what is being said tonight. There is a lot of information, comes from a lot of experience, and I'm not going to go through my story so much, but I did speak about it last session. You can always listen to recording and get that. So let's get down to the concept of relationships, a nice hot topic. There are two types of relationships in general. There is a forced relationship and there is a voluntary relationship. Forced relationships are easy to understand. That's family. Family are forced relationships. Neighbors are forced relationships. Co-workers are forced relationships. These are relationships that were given to you, not something that you asked for. You move into an area, even if you move to that area because you like the area and you like the people that live there, you have absolutely no control over the amount of time those people stay living there. You have no control over new neighbors that come in. So those are forced relationships. They may start off as voluntary, but they turn out to be forced relationships. Your friends are voluntary relationships. Your coworkers, who you work with if you happen to work, are forced relationships. You didn't choose these coworkers to work with. Now, with forced relationships, some of them are easy to get out of. For instance, if you are living in an area that you are not happy with the environment, in other words, you're not happy with the neighbors, you, of course, can pick up and move. Not always an easy thing to do, but it is an option. If you're working in a place where you are unhappy with your boss, you're unhappy with your coworkers, you can leave that work, you can quit that job. Also, not always an easy decision to make, not always an easy thing to do. Nonetheless, those forced relationships, certain forced relationships, are easy to separate from. However, if you have family, some family is not so simple to separate, to sever a forced relationship in a family, especially if it's your children. If it's your children that you are in a forced relationship with, it's not so simple if you're not happy with something that's with your children. Your parents are forced relationships. We do not get to choose who our parents are. So that's another forced relationships. Siblings, forced relationships. Extended family, in-laws, cousins, nephews. These are all forced relationships. And the question is, how do you deal with relationships that are forced relationships that are giving you a hard time? And that's something that we started talking about 2 weeks ago, and we're going to delve into a little bit more. Voluntary relationships, again, if you go to a store, the people that work there are forced relationships, but you voluntarily go to that store. So there are certain relationships that voluntarily you are a part of. One of the biggest voluntary relationships that a lot of people feel are forced relationships, and whenever a person hears the word relationships, they are thinking of spousal relationships. They are thinking of their spouse, or what they call politically correct today, their partner. Spousal relationships, and I have clients that come to me that complain about their spouses. They complain about the marriage that they're in and the fact that they feel that when they made the decision to marry this individual, they feel that it was forced. And in certain environments, in certain cultures, I should say, there is a lot of parental or our people who we look up to who really make a lot of those decisions on who we should marry. And some people feel that they are in a forced relationship in a marriage. And sometimes when a marriage is not going well, an individual may feel that it is a forced relationship, that the idea to sever that relationship is not always a good choice. Some people may feel overwhelmed and may be stuck. But marriage is really a voluntary relationship, even though a lot of us were very young, myself included, when we decided to get married. However, 10 years later, 15 years later, 20 years later, people change a little bit. Sometimes we start to think a little bit differently, and we have the feeling maybe that we're now in a forced relationship. But the truth is, a marriage is a voluntary relationship. It really leads us to what our next discussion is. I'm just giving you a heads up what we're going to be doing in February in our next month. We're going to be focusing on decision making. And this obviously comes into that because we all made a decision to get married. Some of us may feel that we were forced either by parents determining for us or demanding or whatever it is that you want to, whatever word you want to use. And I just want you to know, and I made this very clear last time, I am not here to criticize, to take sides, to, what's it called? Take sides or criticize anybody's culture of how marriage happens. That is not who I am, and that's not what we do here. We're not here to say, yes, this is the right thing to do, or this is the wrong thing to do. We are talking here about concepts, and I know I'm digressing a little bit, but there's 3 levels of people. There's one level of people, human beings, who talk about other people. That's a lower level of people. And I don't necessarily mean gossiping. Obviously, that fits into it. But people who their primary discussions are about other people. The average human talks about events, what's happened. Hey, did you hear what happened here? Or we come and complain about a situation that we were in. Or we have discussions with our friends about something they went to a party, or they went to here, or they talk about events. That's what average people talk about. Higher level people talk about concepts. We are here talking from a higher level of individuals. So we are talking about concepts. So I want to make that very clear that I'm not here to either take a side, to say, wow, this is the right idea, and my opinion that this is the right thing to do, or my opinion that this is the wrong thing to do and this culture is wrong. I am not taking any side, certainly not getting politically involved in any of that. I just want to make that clear. So when I talk about a certain culture, I'm talking about the concept of the culture. I am not criticizing by any stretch of the imagination, God forbid, not by any stretch of the imagination of either criticizing or agreeing with a certain culture. I'm just talking about a concept to get to a certain idea. My hope is that every individual who's here, or most people who are here, will be able to take these concepts and be able to implement them into their daily lives and be able to make their life better and easier going, to be happier, to be calmer, to live and to reach. That is our mission, is to help 100 million people reach their highest self. To live in your highest self means to be discussing primarily about concepts, and that's what we are doing here. So getting back to that, some people in certain cultures feel that when they got married, and the truth is, it's in a lot of cultures, people who got married young, and then 15 years later, they look around, they go, wow, this is not what I had in mind. I was very young. I was 17, 18, 19 years old, even 20 years old, still a very young individual without a lot of life experience. And I made a major decision to get married for whatever reason. In a lot of cultures, in our Jewish religious culture, obviously it is taught that this is the proper thing to do, to have family, to have mishpacha, to have children, to build a family. That is what we are taught. And there are a lot of people who feel later on, 15 years later, that, I don't know, this is not what I signed up for. This is not exactly what I had in mind. And all of a sudden they get a little bit mature and they start to question their decisions. And we're going to get more into that in our next podcast next month, and we'll talk more about that at the end of this podcast. So we're talking about our voluntary relationship. Like I said, marriage is a voluntary relationship, not an easy relationship if you are unhappy in a relationship to sever. It's not so simple just to get separated, especially if there's children involved. It's not so simple just to get divorced, but it is an option. However, forced relationships, which are families, you can't decide that your parents are not your parents. You can't decide that your siblings are not your siblings. They are. You can distance yourself and put up boundaries. However, the bottom line is, and here we're going to come to 6 rules that I came up with based on what we spoke about last podcast. See, last podcast, we primarily spoke about others, our relationship with others, focusing on other people. Because one of the rules is there are 2 parts to every relationship, whether it is a forced relationship or whether it is a voluntary relationship. Either way, there are 2 parts to every relationship. In other words, there are always 2 people, at least, involved. There's you and the other individual. Always, every relationship, there are 2 parts to every relationship. Last podcast, we spoke about a little bit about this, and we decided last podcast we were going to talk about others, because a lot of people prefer to talk about others. That's the easier way to go. Like I told you, lower end people talk about other people. Average people talk about events. Again, even when we talk about events, we are talking about others. Tonight, we are going to focus on ourselves. And hopefully you will learn some concepts that you can implement in your relationships, in your life, that can enhance whatever struggle you are having in your relationship, or even if things are going well, to improve your relationships. Because rule number 1 is humans were not created to live on their own. Cohabitation, to live with other human beings, is the way the world was created. The world was created in a way that it is impossible or almost impossible to live by yourself. we always have to come on to other people for something. If you really want to look into it, you're wearing clothes. If you want to think about the amount of people that were involved in you wearing that garment that you are currently wearing, and if you have a natural garment, in other words, if you have from cotton, something that comes from an animal, if you have leather that comes from an animal, the process that it takes to transform from that material until it is something that you can put on and wear. If you really want to think about starting off with shearing the sheep to get the cotton, then, and I'm not that familiar with the exact process, but my point is that, and then the farmer that gathers this together, and then they send it to the factory that whatever they do, the spindle, that they make it into cotton, into threads, and then the tailors that make the threads, and even if it's machine run, the factory that's created, so the owner of the factory and the employees in the factory and the designers and the ones that cut and make this piece of clothing, and then they ship it, so the shippers that ship the product, and then the store that sells the product. As you can see, there's a tremendous amount of people involved in every single thing that we need. We need clothes to wear. So the amount of people that it takes, you can't do this on your own. Not that it is extremely difficult. All the food that we eat, if you think about the farmers, that they have to harvest the crops, they have to plant the seeds, and then they gather the fruits and they gather the vegetables, and then they send it off to the manufacturers who deal with it, or the stores to sell it, and so on and so forth. Every single item that we have. And even if you won't want to talk about those items, stuff that we buy on Amazon, the stuff that's sold on Amazon, the amount of work it takes to manufacture every single thing that we use, even the most basic of things. Even if you're just talking about basic water, the amount of work it takes for the town that you live in to make these reservoirs, to collect the rainwater and transfer, so you can just turn on your tap and the water comes out. You start to realize, when you start to think like that, how it is almost impossible, not impossible, but almost impossible, obviously in an extremely primitive life. They live primarily on their own, but even they had to come on to other people. We cannot live on our own. For us to exist, we need each other. The challenge is, how do we get along with each other? And that is what these two sessions we're talking about, cohabitation. How to live with each other, because, as I stated, the world was created for man. When I say man, I don't just mean males. I mean man, humans to live with other human beings. And it's extremely important to never forget that. And I don't mean that it has to be first and foremost in your conscious every minute of every day. However, to recognize it, even if it's only every week, to be grateful when you're living in your home, how many people were involved in building that home. You had to get the excavators to dig the ground, the cement trucks that brought the cement to lay the foundation, the carpenters who cut the trees down, the logs, and the companies that made the logs into wood, if you're living in wood, or if you need the masonry people that went into the, I forget what they're called, those places where they, the rock piles where they made into bricks, and just the amount of work that it takes just to build the basic structure of your home, then the electrician and the plumber and everybody who was involved in creating your home and everything that you have, you start to really appreciate the level of what humans are, that we really need other human beings in order to exist, even our most basic needs. And when you start to think about that, it should humble you a little bit, recognizing how grateful we are for humankind, that there are other humans in the world, that we cannot exist on our own. So that's rule number one. And like I said, I do recommend that you take some notes over here. Rule number one, that you have to coexist. You must have other human beings. You don't have to like every human on the planet. There's 8 billion individuals on this planet. You're not responsible to like every other human being on the planet, but to become aware that we need other humans. We have to coexist. We have to Rule number two, every creature, not just humans, even mammals, Every creature in the world has a positive and a negative aspect to them. Every creature, every creation. In other words, not only humans, not only animals, not only fish, but even inanimate objects like rocks and even the elements. And I love one of the analogies that I heard from one of the coaches that works with us is that water washes us, water hydrates us, water is our rain, it makes our plants grow. So therefore the farmers can give us the food that we need. Water is a very important thing. Without water, we can't exist. It's one of the 5 basic needs: air, water, food, sleep, and going to the bathroom. Those are the 5 basic needs every human being needs to exist. So water is extremely important. However, you can also drown in just a few inches of water. If you hit your head and you fall in your bathtub, God forbid, we've all heard these stories, you will die. So water has a positive aspect to it. If you get too much water into your body, you can drown. Your lungs will be full of water. You won't be able to exist. So again, it has the positive aspect. It has the negative aspect to it. Fire. Fire is a great element. It warms our food. It warms our home, especially now in the winter. It warms our home. We need fire. It gives us energy, right? When you need energy, gasoline lights the fire that makes things go, like our automobiles. They use coal for the trains and the planes. Fire ignites the fuel that makes our engines go. Very important aspect of life. It can also burn our house down. It can also burn our food. It can also burn us alive. Fire has both elements, just like everything in the world has a positive and negative element. Every human being in the world has a positive and a negative element. Again, so number 1, we all need other humans to exist. Number 2, we all have positive and negative aspects. That's you too. You also have a positive and negative aspect to yourself. Every creature, every human, and I do believe mammals also, make mistakes. We make mistakes. We are not perfect. The reason why we make mistakes is because there's something as human beings that we don't own. We don't own the future. And something we're going to be talking about in our next podcast when we talk about decision making. That when we make decisions, because we don't know the future, we are sometimes indecisive of how to make a decision. We all make mistakes. There is no such thing as a human being that is perfect. I used to say, I am a perfect human being. I make perfect mistakes. I do. Understanding that you make perfect mistakes, that you are a perfect human being that makes perfect mistakes, will also make it easier to coexist and to cohabitate with other individuals, understanding just like everybody else makes mistakes, you also make mistakes. Number 4, rarely, I'm not saying never, rarely, human beings do harmful thing to other human beings with the intention, the sole intention, to harm somebody with no gain. Now, I know that there are terrorists, there are tyrants, there are dictators that do some pretty horrible things to other people. Nonetheless, they do it with an agenda. They believe they do it with a purpose. There's a lot of religious eccentrics that will die for a cause, that will kill themselves, will kill children. We know about this. We're not that far away from those instances that happen. They will rationalize and they will say why they feel that they have a right to do it. I know myself, when I was younger, my parents gave me money to buy candy, so I would steal it from the store. I felt justified. My parents did give me money. I need my candy. I'm going to steal it. I wasn't trying to harm this storekeeper. I wasn't thinking, obviously, rationally, that I may be harming somebody else by taking this for my own selfish gain. But it is rare, very rare, that human beings will intentionally harm somebody else just for the sake of harming. I'm not saying it's never. We happen sometimes with people who are antisocial. I work in a psychiatric emergency room. I've been in psychiatry for 15 years. There are people who don't comprehend this concept. And those are the extreme people, like I mentioned last time. We're not going to talk about the extreme. That's why we say rare. We don't say never. But basic humans are basically good people. We are all trying to do what's good for us. And a lot of times, other people we believe, get in our way. So we will push people down, we will knock people over, we will do things horrible to other people, not because we want to harm somebody, but we rationalize what we do because we are trying to do something good for ourselves. So that's why I say rarely does a human being intentionally harm somebody just for the sake of doing harm. That's rule number 4. Rule number 5, and this is the most important one. We said in rule number 1 that there's 2 parts to every relationship. There's me, there's you. There's you, and there's somebody else. 2 people, always 2 people in a relationship. There's never a relationship. When we're talking about relationships, we're not talking about relationship with self, obviously, but as cohabiting and coexisting, there are 2 parts in a relationship. From the 2 parts in the relationship, and this is extremely, extremely important, and everything that we said now was really just a preface to get to this most important, vital concept, rule, I call it, of cohabitation, coexisting relationships. From the 2 people involved in the relationship, you as a human being only have one of those 2 people that you have the power to change. I repeat that. From the 2 people in a relationship, every single human has the power to only change one. And when talking about relationships, and I didn't preface this, I apologize, we are only talking about individuals 18 and older. We're talking about adults. We're not talking about parenting children. That is a different discussion. Some of these concepts relate to it, some of them don't. Yes, adult children, it still relates to it because once a child is emancipated and reaches 18 years old, whether they live in your home or not, you do not have the same responsibility anymore, certainly not legally anymore, to be in charge of them. Before 18, you as a parent has a personal obligation to raise that child, to guide them appropriately, yes, to change them and to teach them. That is until the age of 18. What we are discussing here, this last rule, is obviously only talking about adults, even adult children who are over the age of 18. From the 2 people that are in a relationship, and this is a rule that is always. There are not very many generalities that are so concrete. A lot of times there's some gray area. There is no gray area here, other than, as I stated, extreme situations. If there's an individual who can't fend for themselves, even if they are adults, if God forbid they have some type of mental illness or they have some physical disability, we are not talking about those individuals. We are talking about 80% of individuals who are healthy-minded, healthy individuals. Not that they don't have emotional issues or problems, nonetheless. As a human being, every human has the power, not the responsibility, the power to change only one of those 2 individuals. Many people don't believe that. Many people forget that. And this is what causes conflict. And that's what we're focusing on tonight. Last podcast, we spoke about the other individual. Today, we are talking about you. You have the power only to change yourself. Well, what do you do if you have somebody who's annoying? What do you do if you have a forced relationship of an individual that's really pushing your buttons, that's making life difficult for you? What if you have a spouse that keeps doing things that are really annoying? Last week, we spoke about that it comes to sometimes a conversation, which is a confrontation. In other words, there's a time that for a relationship, and if you don't speak to your spouse, some people say, oh, I have a wonderful marriage. We never fight. If you never fight, you never talk. That's it. When you are living together with another individual under the same roof, 24 hours a day, and I don't mean that you're there 24 hours a day, but if you are married to somebody, there is going to come a time where there is going to be conflict. It's only natural. We are humans, that we have differences of opinion. We have differences of ideas. We have differences of feelings, and we have differences of upbringings, even though, as we stated last time, that we do try to marry somebody within our religion, obviously, within our culture, that we have the same similar philosophies about things. But to find another individual that agrees with every single thing that you do is important. Not realistic, because each one of us is individual. The universe needs each one of us to be individual. So as individuals to coexist, to cohabitate with another individual, there is going to be conflict. Not always a bad thing to have conflict. That's how you grow. That's how you learn. We have conversations. We have discussions. So when you're having a conversation with your spouse, for instance, or it can be with another relationship, we said that there are three things to ask yourself prior to approaching that individual, whether it's a forced relationship or it's a voluntary relationship. Number one, does this thing need to be said? What you're about to say. You want to change that person. That person did something to you that they spoke condescendingly, they said something inappropriate, they hurt your feelings, you don't agree with something. Does it need to be said? Number one. If it doesn't need to be said, well, as we say, not your monkey, not your circus. Doesn't need to be said. Wonderful. Okay, it does need to be said. Doesn't need to be said now. Not everything needs to be said now. A lot of times when we're in an emotional crisis, we feel that we need to mention it right now. Right now. That comes from our own sense of insecurity, which we're going to talk about. Doesn't need to be said now. Can you say yes? Sometimes yes, not always a no. The third thing is, doesn't need to be said by you. A lot of times if you're in a certain environment, and for instance, at work, and there's somebody who's misbehaving, and you don't like the way they're behaving or the way they're acting, the way they're saying things, and you feel that that person needs to be put in a place and being told, oh yeah, something needs to be said. Doesn't need to be said now? Maybe. Doesn't need to be said by you? No. I can pass it on to my manager and my supervisor and notify them and let them talk about it. I wanted to add one more thing. If you are going to do confrontation and have a conversation, is to ask yourself and to think through, how important is it and what is going to be the outcome? See, if the outcome is just for you to feel better, rarely it's going to come out right. However, if the outcome is that you want to be understood and you want to express from yourself, I'm very sensitive to this, and when you do this, it hurts me, that's different. But if you know for sure that whatever this other person is doing, they are not going to change, they've been doing it for 30 years, and you can tell them 100 times, well, then you got to make a decision. Am I going to stay with this person? Am I not? But it's very helpful to ask yourself, does it really pay to do this if they're not going to change? Or is it worthwhile to say it because I want them to hear it? Maybe they don't realize, right? Maybe they don't realize. But again, remember the rule number 5. The only person in a relationship that you can change is you. The only person that you can change is you. So what do we do with annoying people? This is Harv Eker. The name of the book is Secrets of a Millionaire. He talks about this concept a lot, a theories, very helpful. It was helpful for me. I used it. I had a annoying nurse that I work with. She's still annoying. She really is. But we have a great relationship because I use this concept. She doesn't affect me anymore. Certainly not on the same level. She hasn't changed much. She really hasn't. However, I have. So he says, nothing has meaning except for the meaning we give it. Now, what do we say? The only person that can change in a relationship is you. The only thing that you are going to have meaning about this relationship is what you give. The meaning comes from you, not what other people say. People love to give other people advice and say, oh, you should do this and you should do that. Really, until you own it as your own meaning, it doesn't have meaning. It's only the meaning that you give it. You have the power to give any relationship that you are in, any relationship, not just a marriage, the meaning that you give it. So I want you to practice, I'm continuing to read. I want you to practice reframing other people's negativity. So if you have somebody else who's, and again, it could be a spouse, it could be a relative, it could be a friend, it could be a coworker, it could be a cashier at a store. It could be, like I said, it could be a forced relationship or a voluntary relationship. And you see somebody acting in an erratic fashion, in a very inappropriate fashion, saying things that are horrible. The more negative they are, the more reminders you have about how ugly that way of being is. So you reframe it. You tell them, as I'm continuing to read, just do it without condemning them for how they are. For if you do begin to judge, criticize, and put them down for who they are and what they do, then you are no better than them. I want you to know, I just had this morning. I work in the psychiatric emergency room. I work nights. It was at the end of my shift. It was 6:30 in the morning. I finished my shift at 7 a.m. And there was an individual, they'd worked all night and they were tired and they just put their head down, dozing off. And there was no emergency at the moment. That person was not needed for the moment. And one of the doctors came in and needed to talk to that individual, but realized that the person was sleeping and he was a mensch. And he said, you know what, I'll be back in an hour. If she gets up, it's fine. If she does get up, just tell her this and this. And he walked away. A very, obviously, a decent human being. Another person came in. I'm not going to say what their role is. And they came in earlier. They work on the day shift. In other words, they don't really start their shift at 8 o'clock. This is 6:30 in the morning. And that individual woke up that person to tell them something that they didn't need to know until at least 8 o'clock. They couldn't do anything about it anyways till 8 o'clock. And I was standing right there and I saw it. And I go, wow. And I reminded, so what did I do with that? First of all, I've really shied away from gossiping. And I decided I wasn't going to tell anybody. I wasn't going to go tell the coworkers. I wasn't going to talk bad about this person. It really showed me how ugly that behavior is. And then I have a certain acronym that I use that I teach a lot, that I came up with a few years ago. It's been very helpful for me. Idiot. I did it once too. Oh yeah, I've done that. I've seen people in my previous years before I got into recovery. I would get so anxious that if somebody was on the phone and I did this to my wife, horrible. I'm telling you, I know I'm laughing, but that's just my coping mechanism. But I feel so remorseful. I mean, thank God I rarely do it anymore. I needed my wife to stop talking, or I need that individual to stop talking because I had to tell them something right then. Was it life-threatening? No, it really wasn't. I've rarely, not never, rarely had a life-threatening situation. But for me, I need that person to know that right now. I would interrupt discussions. I still do that sometimes. I'm aware of it. So that was a reminder to me. I didn't say a word to that individual. I didn't criticize him, and I didn't gossip about him. And it just reminded me, wow, okay, thank you. Thank you for the reminder of how I used to be. Thank you for showing me how ugly that behavior is. That just happened this morning. And then, so that helped me a lot, this reframing. Looking at other people's behaviors, that if I'm seeing it, the world is a mirror. If I'm seeing it, that means that there's something in me. And now I'm going to quote for you Wayne Dyer, who is another psychologist, an author, has a lot of great books. He talks about this concept specifically, and I will quote him. And this concept, every time I read it, I really get chills down my spine. Very powerful. Bear with me 1 minute as I turn to the page. I quote, everyone in your life who can still push your button and send you into that frenzied state is a master teacher disguised as frustrating, non-understanding being. The peace that is enlightenment means that you are not only at peace with those who share your interests and agree with you, and with strangers who come and go, but also with those master teachers who remind you that you still have some work to do on yourself. Give thanks for those great spiritual masters who have arrived in your life in the form of your children, current or former spouses, irritating neighbors, co-workers, obnoxious strangers, and the like, for they help you stay in an enlightened, peaceful state. They let you know each day how much more work you truly have to do and in what way you have not mastered yourself. Wow, how powerful is that? To be able to take a situation to be able to take a coexistence, to be able to take a confrontation, to be able to take a conversation with another individual, an incident, and use it for your own benefit to grow. All your animosity, all your anger, all your frustration will totally disappear in the moment. Because as I stated, there's two people to every relationship, and only one, you have the power to change. And when you start to focus on that, and I speak from personal experience, you'll notice that the people around you will change. You see, when you change the way you look at other people will change. As I stated, rule number 2, every creature has a positive and negative aspect, including yourself. When we choose what a relationship is that we choose. We have the power to choose and focus on their positive aspects of why we are connected to them in the first place, especially if it is a spouse. When we focus on what they're doing wrong, on the mistakes that they're making, now we can do something with it. Instead of blowing that out of proportion and just focusing on that, what's going to happen is we are just going to stop looking at their positive aspects and just looking at their negative aspects, because we forget that from the two people, there's only one person that we have the power to change, just ourselves. And if we're getting frustrated with what somebody else does, we can either reframe, like Harbecker says, we can reframe and say, thank you for reminding, not tell them that, but to ourselves, thank you for reminding me how ugly that behavior is. Then we can look at what Wayne Dyer says, that this is a master teacher. This is somebody teaching me what I still need to work on. After you've done that, does not mean that you should never have a conversation with your spouse or with somebody who is doing something harmful to you. That does not mean that that should never happen. However, when you come first with that and you don't react with the emotion, you will find that you will rarely say something that you will have tremendous regret for later on. So let's just recap. And then what we're going to do is we're going to open up for Q&A. You cannot live on your own. We need everybody else in this universe for us to exist. We don't have to like everybody, but we need everybody. We have to come. We were created in order to live with other individuals. I don't make the rules. I'm not in management. I got fired in management a long time ago. I fired myself, thank God, because when I was in management, I kept hitting the wall and doing these horrible things to other people, not unbeknownst to me. I thought I was always right, but I fired myself from management because I'm incompetent. I cannot manage the world. I cannot manage other people. I have enough trouble managing myself. So when I stay in my lane and just work on me, I'm a lot happier. So I'm not in management. I don't make the rules. But one of the rules of creation is that we need other people in order to coexist, to cohabitate, to live with other people. Every human being has positive and negative aspects, myself included. Every human being. We make mistakes, every human being, because we don't know the future. So we make decisions based on what we know, thinking and hoping that this will work out well for us. But the truth is we don't know. And a lot of times when we react from emotion, it's because we are in fear. We're not going to get into that so much now. We do talk a lot about it in our programs, but just for our conversation here, for our topic here, we're not going to get into that. It is rare, or should I say, humans are basically good people. Humans basically are fine individuals. We, humans, rarely do things intentionally just to harm people without some type of justification. Yes, there are tyrants, there are terrorists, there are dictators who do horrible atrocities. I'm not talking about the mentally ill now, who do horrible atrocities with a purpose. They're not doing it to harm you just for the sake of harming. They're doing it for some type of cause and some type of purpose. Doesn't mean that they're right, but it's rare that another human being harms somebody else just for the intention of doing harm. Rare, I'm not saying never. There's two parts to every human being, to every relationship. Two people, always, at least two. Two, and out of the two, us human beings, we are human beings. I'm assuming everybody here is a human being. We forget it sometimes. We do. We have the power to only change one of those two people. And the one person that we have the power to change, the only one only is ourselves. And again, we're talking about adults. We're not talking about children. That's very different. We have an obligation to raise children. We're not talking about that. Having said that, we gave you some tools of how to focus on people who are annoying to you. What does that mean to you? Why are you getting upset? How do I interact with other people? When you do this work first on yourself, I promise you that you will find that your interactions with other people will improve immensely. You will rarely lock horns with another individual. Doesn't mean that you're not going to have conflict. It doesn't mean that you're going to agree with every single person on the planet. Doesn't mean that you have to like everybody. But the spice of life is variety, diversity. The universe needs all these different people. Why? I have no clue. I told you I'm not in management. I didn't make the rules. The rules were made by somebody else, by God, made the other rules. So you can ask him, but I'm just trying to follow them. So this concludes the informational aspect of our second part of the discussion on the topic of relationships. Doesn't mean that we are not going to speak about it again down the road in the future. We welcome, if you would like to have a certain topic discussed on our Mindful Mondays. For now, we're doing these twice a month. You can always email us, our email address, and Darren, please put it in the chat. But for those of you who do not have, who are not online, who are calling in, you can write it down. It's info, I-N-F-O, at ascentbyktpo.com. You can email us and give us your recommendations, your suggestions. We'd love to hear it. You can text the office also, 845-409-9466. Also, if you have certain recommendations, just like you answered when you had to sign up for the Mindful Mondays. For those of you who would like to find out a little bit more about what we do, we have a free webinar on our hotline. You can either go to our website, which is ascentbyktpo.com. We're doing a little bit of fixing it a little bit. I can't think of the word right now. Renovations on it, but ascentbyktpo.com is our website, or you can call in. We have a hotline where you can call in and listen to a free informational recording, about 30 minutes long, about our different programs, just information. It's absolutely free. 845-241-8855, 845-241-8855, where you can call in and you can listen at your own leisure to a something. We have a lot of free stuff on those recordings. This recording here, we decided that this recording from 2 weeks ago, if you missed it, or if you want to hear it again, it will be on the hotline sometime tomorrow. I'm not sure exactly when, but by tomorrow evening, almost for sure, you'll be able to call in to listen to last week's session. This one, it takes about a week for us to do the editing, so it'll be another week before it'll be up. We'll keep that up for a month until we complete our next session, which is going to be on decision making. So it will be up there for about a month. You can listen to it. You can invite your friends to listen to it. There's no obligation at all, just for your benefit to listen to it again. You can call it anytime. You can listen as many times as you want. You can let your friends or family listen to it. That will conclude this portion of it. Our next Mindful Mondays will be February 17th. Yes, I know that's 3 weeks from now and not 2 weeks from now. But as I stated, we're going to do it twice a month. We're going to be on the 17th and the 24th. You will get the same notifications that you got to reminder for yourself. Tell all your friends and family. They just need to text in the word mindful and they will get the notifications. We will be on, as I stated, February 7th and 24th, talking about decision making, same time, same place. You are more than welcome to come. The recording is also on our YouTube channel. For those of you who are online, the link to our YouTube channel where you can actually see this recording, not today's yet, that'll be up in a week, but from 2 weeks ago is up and live now. You can copy the link from our chat. We're going to open for Q&A, and I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping before that. We don't do crosstalk here. We want to keep everybody safe and anonymous. You do not have to mention your name. Raise your hand if you are online, and I will call you out. Those who are on, what's it called? I'll just call by the first name that I see there, or first the letter. For those of you who are calling in, press *6 to unmute, *6 to unmute, and I will be more than happy to answer your questions to the best of my ability. I see somebody already texted, and I will read that. We will do the texting as well in the chat, or you can text the office at 845-400-9466. I just want you to know that *9 to raise your hand if called in. Okay. *9, I don't know what that means, but I guess people understand. *9 is to raise your hand, and that's how you will get called in. If you have a question, you can text 845-400-9466, but I will first be taking the people who unmute. So we are open now. I think I mentioned everything. I don't think, did I miss anything? Darren or Shalom, did I miss anything? We're good? Okay, good. So who would like to get us started with either a question or answer? I'm going to read through this text, and a lot of people love listening to other people's questions and answers. It's extremely informative. I enjoy it very much. I learn a lot from it. And some of the questions that we had 2 weeks ago, I used in preparation for today's session. So we really thank you for that. Since nobody unmuted yet, let me just read to you what this person wrote. Hi, thank you for doing this. How would you advise me to not take to heart and be affected emotionally from the critical, opinionated, limited, primitive, verbally abusive, widowed, elderly mother? I'm an only child, so I can't share the responsibility. As much as I don't value her words, it's still hard to hear it or ignore it, being that it's from a mother who is otherwise loving and caring. She's mentally healthy, no dementia. That's a great question. Very powerful question. When it comes to children to parents, because there's a few beliefs that you have here and something that you stated. Your mother, and we only get one. We don't get more than one mother. Your mother is very loving, you said. She is otherwise loving and caring. So your mother is loving and caring. Our parents were loving and caring. Now, parents from a previous generation may have gone through certain traumas, and they are abusive, verbally abusive, like you are expressing, critical. And I can relate to that. I want you to know, first of all, I didn't say this, and I apologize. I want to validate your feelings. They are real. It is very difficult to live with a verbally abusive parent, even as we get older. It's easier when we are older because we're not living with them in the home. However, if an individual, when they are older, and I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that you don't live with this widowed elderly mother, correct? No, I don't. Okay. So when you lived with your mother, when you were young, the parents were nurturing. What do I mean? They gave you a home, they gave you food, they gave us clothing. They also emotionally abused us. When they were frustrated, they passed on that frustration to us. When they were overwhelmed, they neglected us. They didn't nurture our feelings. For a child with such a parent, there is a mixed message that comes forth. The mixed message is that nurturing equals abuse, because that's what we were taught. We're also taught, and it's just human nature, not just in our, Yiddishkeit, but just in general, not just one of the 10 commandments, honor your parents, right? But it's just human nature that we honor our parents and our elders. That's what we are taught in any religion, in any culture. We're not allowed to say anything bad about our parents. But if they're abusive, it makes that so much more difficult, which is exactly what you're asking. What do you do with a parent like you're expressing? So obviously your mother is grieving. I don't know how long she is a widow, but she's grieving being all alone. She does not have anybody else in the world other than you. Now, she may have siblings, I don't know. She lost her husband, and you are an only child. That puts a lot of responsibility on a child. Unfair responsibility. It is unfair. So as we stated, that there's only one person that you can change, and you ask it so well. So you ask, how do I not take to heart? We can use the same thing that I told you about. Number one is reframing. Number one, is noticing that this words that she is using, how ugly is it to speak to another individual, especially their only child, with that? That's number one. It's a great reminder how not to be. Number two is that in a relationship, there's only one of you that you can change. Only one of you. When you have another individual, like your mother, you can focus primarily on the good things that she has done for you. When you just focus on what she did for you, that she raised you, she fed you, she may have made some sacrifices for you, and you realize that her frustrations that she is going through, her grievance, that she is grieving the loss of her husband, your father. I don't know if he's your father, it's an assumption. The struggle that she went through in her life, and maybe she's feeling some remorse, some regret, and she's projecting her frustrations on you, does not mean that you need to carry it. And this is some of the work that we do, inner child work, which it sounds like you would benefit from if you're not already doing that type of work. And we do those things. You can, like I said, you can call us and listen to the webinar. I promise you that when you change this attitude and you do what Wayne Dyer says about realizing that she is a master teacher, she's a spiritual master teacher, teaching you what you still need to work on for yourself, you will start to see her in a different light. I promise you that her negative words, her limited or opinionated, all the adjectives that you use to describe her speech will affect you less. You see, there is a rule, something that we teach, and I didn't bring it up over here. I kind of did in a different way, but not in the same way. It's never the other person. It's never the situation. And you asked so brilliantly, how can I not take it to heart? As you look at her in gratitude for what she did for you, and look at her from a different perspective, and her beautiful trait that she has, that other stuff that she does will affect you less. It's an inside job. It's on you. I gave you several tools, and that is really the way to do it. And I promise you that it will change. I promise you. But it won't change if you keep looking at her as this horrible, with all those critical and those words that you gave. It's not easy, especially if she's been doing this your whole life. And I speak from personal experience. It's not easy, but it can be done. It's harder if you have this in your childhood as well, because it's ingrained in you, but it is possible. And that is some of the ways. It's work, no question. I'm just answering you briefly, but we do have a process. And again, I gave the access to find out more about that and listen to that. I hope that was helpful. Thank you. You're welcome. Who else has a question or a comment? Something that they would like to be addressed. Somebody texted, can you speak of BPD, borderline personality disorder, and about relationships with them? I'm just wondering, maybe, I don't know if that's so everybody, I hear you. That's another discussion about dealing with somebody who has behavioral issues. It's a completely different discussion. It's not really for this. I don't really want to get into that here because it's not really for this discussion. The person who unmuted is going to get 1 second. Somebody sent me something. Let me look at this question. Okay. I don't know if I want to get into bipolar, borderline personality. I'm assuming you're asking that. That's not everybody who has that. I hear you. That's a different way of addressing somebody who has some type of mental illness. Borderline personality disorder is a personality disorder. It's not like bipolar, it's not like schizophrenia, it's not like mania, it's not like depression. It's a behavioral, and there's a whole different way to deal with that. That would take a more extensive type of work. If you want to reach out to the office and do a session on that, that's something else. Okay, getting back to a regulated place after being very triggered, where everything, 1 second. I have a question. What relations, spousal, okay, the answer. Thanks for your information podcast. You mentioned how someone who is an annoying person no longer bothers you, aside from, as you said, reframing. This is a teachable moment for yourself. How does one actually cope with legitimately annoying or toxic people? Same thing. That's exactly what you do. You reframe them. And then you notice how what they're saying is the meaning that you give it. So I don't take it personally. This is them, ugly that behavior, and then it doesn't affect me. And then I do what Wayne Dyer says, that we look at them as spiritual teachers, that they are here to teach me what I still have to work on. If you notice, we're getting a lot of texts and things. These are very practical things that go on in the day-to-day. I'm here to tell you that there's only one of two people from every relationship that can change. And that's not the other person. That's you. And when I reframe and when I recognize when they do affect me, and it's rare that they do affect me, when they do affect me, then I remind myself, oh, number one, I say idiot. I did it once too. I annoyed somebody else. I don't know if there's a human being on this planet who interacts with other people who didn't annoy somebody at some point in time, whether it be known to them or unbeknownst to them, whether it wasn't intentional or not. We all do it. We are human beings. We make mistakes. So this person is annoying. I was annoying. So I don't look at them anymore from being this horrible individual. I look at them as being an individual. I know this person actually went through some trauma. I am aware of it. And I understand it. It's not an excuse, but it's a reminder for me that I can look at them and their positive aspects. And when I am stable, I become less affected. That's why it's an inside job. That's why they don't affect me. What do I do if a workmate bullies me? She names a fish with my last name and tells my students that, let's say, Friedman died. 1 second, I'm trying to understand this. Also yells at me in front of staff and students, makes fun of me, and negates anything that I do or say. Last year, she knocked down the phone on me and staged a full-blown attack on me. I had to clear my name with the administration, very sly and controlling. Okay. If you have a workmate as such an individual who is doing these types of behaviors in front of staff, the only thing that you can do is go to your superior, go to your manager and say, I'm having an issue with this coworker. She's verbally abusive. She talks in front of other people, and you file a complaint. That is what you do with a coworker who's acting like this. Yes, you work on yourself, but you're not here to change that other person. However, if somebody is abusive, as you stated, I'm not saying what she did. Again, I'm just hearing one side of the story. So I'm not judging the other person. I can't judge the other person because I don't know. I only know based on what you said. But if what you are saying is true, and they are, and again, I'm not saying that what you're saying is not true. That is when you go to your manager. Don't try to handle this yourself. You go to your boss and you say, I have a problem. I need help. I'm working in this place, and this individual is extremely abusive, and you document it. On this day, this person said this and this. On this person, they say this and this. And one of the jobs of managers and supervisors is what we call conflict resolution. It is their job to resolve it. That's what you do. You take it to your manager. That's as simple. It's just a simple answer. Nobody deserves to be treated in that way. Okay. Who says nothing has meaning, only meaning we give it? Whose quote is that? That's T. Harv Eker from Secrets of a Millionaire Mind. And it is on page 97 of that book. I would rather hear about how to manage an anxious mouth, and how to control yourself when you need to binge. Okay. We're talking about relationships now. You can reach out to the office and listen to our webinar. We do talk about the anxious mouth that controls themselves with overeating. And that's not the topic for tonight. We are talking about this, what's the word I'm looking for? Relationships. So the person who texted that, just reach out to the office and they will direct you to a webinar which talks about this. Getting back to it, nobody wants to unmute. Okay, we're doing all text tonight. No problem. I prefer to talk to people because I hear the nonverbal communication, whereas in texting, it's hard to do that. But I hear you. Getting back to a regulated place after being very triggered when everything is a 10, and get back to love the other one after doing everything possible and getting nothing in return. Is it humanly possible to reframe if the triggers are coming every few minutes? Absolutely. I don't like the word trigger. And I'll tell you why. How do I keep my ground for the time being? When does one know if it is their work or the other party's? It is never, never, never the other person. If a person is getting triggered, other person is not triggering them. If a person is stable, if a person is spiritually and emotionally mature and connected to themselves and to reality, it is rare that they will get triggered. Doesn't mean that somebody says something, it doesn't affect us immediately. We are human beings. But if you're getting triggered again and again, it is not the other person. It is you. There's something in you that needs some inner work to determine why is this individual pushing your buttons, just like Wayne Dyer says. They are a reminder that there's something in you that still needs work, which I answer your next question. When do you know to work on themselves and when they have to reach out for professional help? I don't believe in general that you can do this work on your own. In general, it's almost impossible to do this work on your own for multiple reasons. We lie to ourselves. We rationalize because we are trying to exist. We are the number one person in our lives, always. So when somebody impedes on our security and our safety, we're going to get affected. To determine when do we need professional help, when do we need to work on ourselves, it's almost impossible. You're coming here, you're getting professional help. I'm a professional. So you ask me a question, you're getting professional help. You're actually doing it right now. Now, yes, you didn't hire me and I'm offering this service for free, but it's still going to a professional. It's almost impossible. I believe it's practically impossible to do this work long-term. I'm not saying periodically here and there to do this work on your own, which comes back to one of our rules. Cannot exist on your own. The world was created that we should cohabitate, coexist with other people. To navigate through life totally on your own is an impossibility. We were not created for that. The world was not created for that. We need other people. When there are other people who have mental illness, like a couple you were saying, and you also said borderline personality disorders, that's an illness. That's somebody who needs help in order to heal. Like we said, when we say it's never the other person's never the situation, it also applies to borderline. It does. And there is a very specific way, and I've been trained for years. It's not like a Q&A where I can answer you how to deal with borderline personality disorder. I deal with it in the psychiatric emergency room almost on a weekly basis. We have patients who come in with borderline personality disorder. Not all nurses know how to deal with them. Some are better than others, but we deal with it. We are trained how to deal with them. It is not a simple, quick 2-minute answer how to deal with borderline personality disorder. And if you are living with somebody who has BPD, depends who that individual is. If it's your spouse, even if it's your adult child is living with you, if it's a sibling, if it's a parent, you definitely, in my opinion, need professional help to learn how to navigate through that. Because our whole discussion tonight, not that it doesn't come into that as well, but it is very important for an individual to understand that's an extreme case. Somebody who is a borderline child, for somebody who's a narcissist, that's a different discussion. Can you explain how it is that when somebody deals with a BPD, it is the other person that has to do work on themselves? Can you explain how it is that when somebody deals with a borderline, it is the other person that has to work on themselves? That's not true. Both people have to work on themselves. I have to work on myself not to be affected by the borderline individual. Whether they work on themselves, that's my point. You misunderstood. Whether it's the other person doing their work or not is not my job. That's why, again, like I said, a lot of this still applies, that I cannot change somebody else. And if they have a mental illness, they have a behavioral, what we call a behavioral anomaly of BPD, they don't have to work on themselves. That's their choice. My job is to work how to not get affected by them. And that's what I have to work on. So once again, it's not me about changing them. They can stay borderline for the rest of their life. I can be happy regardless. Is it challenging? Yes, it is. But again, it's not about me changing them. It never is about me changing them. Is it challenging if it's somebody that's living under the same roof as you? 100%. If it's a forced relationship, it's a relative, It's a close relative. Is it challenging? Yes. Is it impossible? No. Is it difficult? At times, yes. But once you learn how to deal with it, there is a certain way to deal with it. It's, again, not about them changing. It never is. It's never the other person. It's never the situation. It is how you. So if you're having problems with that, oh, absolutely. What happens when the BPD doesn't do their work? Is it still possible to keep my ground regardless? Absolutely. Can I learn once, or do I have to constantly ongoing support? No, it's not a one-time. It's not a one-time thing. It's not a instructional one-page explanation. This is something that takes professional help for somebody who's living with that. Absolutely. I do that stuff. I teach the stuff. I work on it. I deal with patients. So yes, it's not a one-page thing. It is work on your part. Absolutely. Professional help for life, weekly? Yes. It doesn't mean that you don't need help for life, but you do need help. If this is something, I would highly recommend that you reach out. Like I said, I do this stuff, so I know. Do you need to do it for life? No, not on that level. At the beginning, yes, but it's not a one-time answer. There is a very, very specific work to do to live with borderlines. They are not easy. The reason they're not easy is because they don't understand the way healthy human beings understand. Their mind doesn't think the same way. And because of that mental illness, they don't think like you think as a human being. They don't. So even though something is logically for you, they don't comprehend that as logical. Like I said, it's rare that a human does things to intentionally harm somebody else. They're not trying to harm you. They are so distraught in their own world, feeling extremely abandoned and neglected and not feeling any emotion. What do you mean? They're very emotional. No, they don't feel life. They don't feel emotion. They're in a very rough place, and they as much as you give them attention, it's never enough. And unless you understand what's going on with them, it will make it very difficult to deal with that type of person. They can be extremely draining, but not impossible. And the work is not on them getting better. The work is on you. And if they live in your home, how do I keep the momentum and not get emotionally exhausted where I cannot continue? Again, you just keep asking the same question again and again. It's not a, you're looking for a quick answer. It doesn't work like that. I'm really sorry. Nobody's going to tell you what's really a quick answer. It's training. It's learning, it's understanding. And like I said, if you want to find out more, we can give you sessions on it. And, but it is extensive because they just don't comprehend. It is a challenge. The way borderlines heal is not through medication. That's why it's challenging. They heal through a nurturing environment. So when people try to change them, it's counterproductive because they are not helping them create a nurturing environment that the borderline needs in order to heal. Okay. Anybody else have a question or a comment, something that they'd like to ask or discuss? February 17th and 24th will be our next thing on decision making. Before we go, is there anybody else who has any questions? You can unmute, star 6 to unmute if you're calling in from a phone. You can text a message to 845-400-9466. We will be able to answer you that way. Hey, you're welcome.
Hi, is this being recorded?
Yes, this is being recorded.
Is there like a number where I could call in to listen?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Well, is there like a call-in number to listen into the recording?
Is there a call-in number to hear the recording? 845-241-8855. You will not be able to hear tonight's recording for another week at least, but you can listen to our previous podcast.
Okay, thank you.
Takes about a week to edit, and
great,
those recordings will be up for about an hour on the hotline. Or you can go to our YouTube channel. They'll be up longer. Okay? Did you get that?
Yes, thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody else with a question or a comment? It can be as simple as that. Again, if you have any suggestions for topics you would like for us to discuss, somebody talking about eating, we may do that. We'll see down the road. As I said, for February, we're going to be doing decision making. Somebody else unmuted? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. If we're the ones that have to work on ourselves, I love that idea. And I just wanted to know,
You love what
Um,
idea?
that it's me that has to work on myself.
Isn't it
I,
so freeing? I just want to
yeah,
expound on that before you even ask your question. And thank you for saying that. How liberating, and again, please respond. I know that I jumped in, you have to ask the question, and I'm asking you. I hope you don't mind. Is that okay?
sure.
Okay. And thank you so much for having the courage to say that. How liberating is it knowing that you're the one who is responsible to change?
It's amazing. It's just beyond. It's
Right?
that means that I don't have to worry about the other person. I only have to worry about
Exactly.
myself.
I'm telling you, when I first heard this, I got really angry. You mean I can't have a resentment? Right? But then when you start to recognize that out of a relationship, there's only two people, and you only have the power to change one. Whoo! You mean I don't
Yeah,
have to climb Mount Everest? I don't have to change the world for me to be happy? I just have to change my perception? Wow, that's so much easier. Because you know you, right? You live with you 24 hours a day, right?
absolutely.
So you're the easiest person to change.
Yes.
You don't got to
So
figure yourself out. You just change you.
right. So I'm going to go a little deeper. So
Please
then
do.
what do you do if, let's say, you have craving? I'm going a little bit towards the direction of like the cravings of like overeating.
Okay.
So you're trying to change yourself. What would you say is the foundation to really, you know you have the craving, you know you're the ones that have to change yourself. You've gone through diets, you've gone through trying so hard, and but
Okay.
the cravings are still there. And
Okay. That's a great question. Great question. Our program primarily talks about that, by the way. And I would recommend that you listen to our webinar. You got the numbers, right?
yes,
Okay. So I want you to know something. I'm going to change one word for you to start with. Fair enough?
sure.
You said, I know that I have the cravings. Yes.
Yes,
I know that I've tried many diets and failed. Correct?
yes.
I want you to change one word. Instead of from now on saying I know, say I believe. Now repeat the same two sentences using the same word, I believe. Using the word I believe. Say it again.
I believe that I have cravings, and I believe that I tried different diets and it didn't work.
You believe. Do you hear the difference? Say it again. I believe I have cravings.
Oh, so you mean it doesn't mean I really do. I just believe it.
Exactly. Say it again. I believe.
I believe. I believe I have cravings.
How does that feel?
You really do. Believe it.
I hear you.
As long as I believe it, I
One
believe it.
second. One second. How does that feel different than saying I know?
Not absolute.
Correct. It's a little less intense, correct?
Yes.
Boom, we started the process. You see, you have a belief about weight loss that comes from multiple years of experience, but that's your perception, that's your belief. That is not a fact. When you say, I know, you created a fact. And it's almost impossible to change a fact, right? Or impossible.
Right.
When you say it's a belief, oh, you mean there's room for another interpretation? You see the difference?
Yes.
There are certain beliefs that you have, probably many, that are causing you to have cravings and preventing you from being successful with weight loss. I can promise you that.
Absolutely. Yes.
What our program does is we uncover those beliefs. Once we uncover the beliefs,
It's a
the
whole
cravings
dance.
disappear.
Right.
Disappear.
That's my question. How do you change your beliefs?
Right.
I guess it's a whole course, how to change your limiting beliefs.
So that's what we do, yes.
Right. It's not on one.
It's hard to stand on one foot the whole time, yes.
Okay, got it.
It's a 6-week program.
Okay.
But that's what we do. I've kept my weight off for 21 years. And I believed for the longest time that I was a failure. I was 312 pounds. And I failed at every diet that I knew that I tried, except for bariatric surgery. I've kept my weight off, my 100-pound weight off, I've kept off for 21 years. I never believed that to be true when I was 21 years ago, before I lost my weight. I had the same feeling that you have, and I validate your feelings. They feel really true. And I felt that I was a failure, that I cannot lose weight. I tried everything. Every time I went on a diet, I knew it wasn't going to work anyways, right? You ever had that?
Yeah.
It was almost pointless to start, but I did it anyways because I had to do something. So frustrating. Only people who go through it can really appreciate the frustration. And I really do appreciate your frustration because I was there. I know what that is. People who don't know what it is, they don't know what we're talking about. Why can't you just stop eating, right? How many people told you that? Right? What's the matter with you? Why can't you stop eating? What, you have to eat the whole box of cookies? Seriously? What, you can't just have 2 and be happy? They don't get it. They don't understand what it is to have a fat mind.
How do you change that fat mind?
Right.
And that's why, I don't know if I hear some background. Is somebody else?
Yeah, someone else is there. She's asking, so how do you change the fat mind?
Oh, well, that's what we do. It's a process.
Right, that's what I was explaining.
It's a process. What we have to do is we have to uncover.
She wants one secret. She wants you to give her one thing to start with for tonight.
I did. I told you, change I know to I believe.
Right.
I'm going to tell you one thing to do, practically speaking. How's that?
Thank you.
Okay? You and your friend / relative, whatever.
Yes.
The key to weight loss is planning. You have to plan. You got to plan your meals. Food prep. A failure to plan is a plan to fail. Now, it doesn't have to be overly exerted, overly extensive. You don't have to plan your food for a year or for a month or even for a week or even for a day. Just plan before you eat. When you are sitting down to a meal, plan what you're going to eat at that meal. There's a beginning of a meal, which is the planning, right? There's the middle of the meal, which is the eating. And there's an end of the meal when the food that you planned is finished. And then it's preferable to eat every 2 to 3 hours, small meals, instead of starving yourself for 5, 6 hours and then eating a large meal. So every 2.5, 3 hours, eat a snack, eat a meal, whatever it is. Even if you decide to eat cake, I don't care. Plan, I'm going to have 1 piece of cake. Okay, eat 1 piece of cake. Plan before you eat. Don't just leave it up to fate. When you plan, and if you can't follow a plan, which I'm assuming that you can't, there's some beliefs there that are blocking you from planning. Guaranteed. Try that 1 meal at a time.
Oh, that sounds great. Thank you so much.
Okay?
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking the question. That's a great, great question. Wow. And somebody else texted, I appreciate that. That's really powerful. When we realize that it's ourselves, at first we say, what do you mean it's me? It's the other person. Then when you say, no, you're the only one who has the power to change it. Somebody texted, let me see. What to do with a husband that I don't feel like he is treating me as number one. For example, if I'm waiting for results and he doesn't take that as an emergency like I am taking it. So he waited a couple of minutes till he called back. That long-awaited phone call, I told them a few times about it, and it seems to be happening again and again. Okay. I want you to know, with all the couples that come to me, this is the #1 complaint is, and we spoke about it last time, that I'm not understood, that my spouse doesn't understand me. And it works both genders. Why is my spouse so annoying to you? What does that person want from me? I'm doing my best. But you said it so well. I don't feel like he is treating me as number one. You don't feel that he is treating you as number one. That does not mean that he is not treating you as number one. It is very possible. I don't know your husband. I don't know you. In his mind, he is doing the best that he can. And who knows? I don't know what his upbringing was. I don't know what happened in his childhood. I have no idea. If you are feeling that you are not treated as number one, then you have determined that you need him to treat you as number one to feel secure, which is a lie. You do not. Yes, there are things that are important to you, like you stated, and he may not see that they're as important, whatever this situation. I didn't totally understand it, that he didn't call back or whatever it was. In every relationship with spouses, you can look at what the other spouse is not doing and get very frustrated. Or you can look at what they are doing. What you comprehend to be important may not be on the same level of importance to the other person. That is very possible. Again, what can you control? You can never change the other person. You can change your perception. Yes, I want my spouse to be more in tune with my needs and my feelings. Yes, I would like that, but they are not. So first, I have to work on myself and getting stable myself. realizing that I don't need my spouse to look at me to be number one in their life. I don't need it. I would like it. It's a beautiful relationship when it happens. And I focus on me. And when I focus on my perception, I'm not saying this is easy. It's really not. And if you've had that conversation and you can tell yourself, you can have this conversation with your spouse and saying, there are certain instances where I don't feel that I'm being loved. I don't feel love. I'm very sensitive. I feel that I need more love, and I don't feel that I'm getting it from you. And maybe they'll respond, I didn't say that you are not loving me. I'm saying that I don't feel love. I really want to love you because I married you. I'd like to know if we can have more conversations about this, and maybe we can go out for dinner. Maybe we can go out for a coffee, and maybe we can get closer to feel each other's emotions. And maybe your spouse is afraid of intimacy, afraid of emotion, which happens. One of the many things that we deal with, in our recovery programs. However, when you are coming with this expectation is only a recipe for anger and resentment. When you say that I don't feel loved and tell them that is very, very different. I hope that's helpful. Is borderline something you were born with or it comes from trauma? There can be a very good question. It can come from a predisposition, very possible. However, it exacerbates with trauma. Trauma triggers mental illness in general. There are people who go through the same upbringing, and one of the children will turn out to be borderline, and one of the children will not. So there is some sort of predisposition in the DNA. It could be epigenetics passed down from generations. It could be in their personality. Some theories want to say that it is where you are in the family dynamics, where you were born. There are multiple of contributors to this, but in general, borderline gets triggered by some type of trauma. Yes. Not all of it is you're born with. Some of it can happen through trauma. Hope that is helpful. Anybody else have a question or a comment?
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hi.
What about a spouse that never, ever, ever makes eye contact to anybody?
What's that? One more
Children.
time? What about a spouse that
Never makes eye contact with anybody. Not to his children, not to his wife, not to his family, not to his parents. That doesn't know how to make eye contact with people.
Okay. So what's your question?
My question is, as a wife.
Okay. So you're
How
the
am I
wife
supposed
of your husband doesn't make eye contact?
No, never. And even
Okay.
if he does, he stares like into space.
Okay. And
And
yeah, go on.
he does say that he makes eye contact. It's sort of like expressionless eyes.
How does he connect with you intimately? And I'm not talking to get physical, or I'm not asking you to get, more.
No, I get it. Very hard to express any type of emotion.
So he is an individual that does not express emotion.
No, runs away from it, actually.
Okay. Sounds like he was brought up in a dysfunctional home and went through some trauma. I'm sorry?
On the outside, the home looks perfect.
I wasn't talking about on the outside. It could be beautiful.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it's like in the inside, like he himself is never going to face it. If I ever dare mention...
Well, you don't know. Well, you don't know that. What? Because you don't own the future.
No, meaning to say, if I ever mention if something happened in his youth, he's going to say that's not true.
Okay, I understand. So what it sounds like to me is that your husband has a tremendous fear of intimacy. And it's very possible. How long have you been married?
Yes.
I want you to know, first of all, I really empathize with you. I really, really do. And I really validate your feelings. And it hurts.
Oh, well, it really does.
It really, really hurts. And only people that can understand what that is can appreciate that. After 30 years of marriage, it doesn't mean that it cannot. I want you to know, and again, I can't speak for him because I don't know him. And I don't want to say anything negative because I'm hearing your perspective. Not that you are not being honest and true with your feelings because you are, but it still is your perspective, correct?
Yeah, okay, it is.
I'm not,
yeah.
again, I'm not minimizing what you're saying.
Right, the pain, right.
I'm really, really not. The pain is real,
Oh, it's raw and real.
very raw and real. And you've been living with this for 30 years. And the question is, which is, I'm assuming your question, what can you do with this? Are you in our program, by the way?
No.
No, you're not. Okay. What can you do to make your life more tolerable, more manageable? That is your question.
Right.
The first thing is to realize that right now, there's only one person in this relationship that you can change. To accept that takes a grieving process. And just like when anybody loses something, how long have you been aware of it let me finish the question, to the extent that you can express it in the way that you are to somebody else?
How long can I, again, I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
How long have you been aware of this problem to the extent that you're able to express it to somebody else who's not going to judge you or criticize you or blame you?
So I've noticed it soon after we were married. How long is it that I was able to express it?
To somebody else.
To somebody else?
In a healthy way. Like now, the way you're expressing it now is a very healthy way. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, probably maybe the last 10 years, maybe less.
And did you go for any professional help with this?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So you've been to couples counseling or you've been only for yourself?
No, just one. I just go to one person.
For yourself?
Just for myself, yeah.
Okay. Has that helped?
Oh, yeah, a lot.
Okay. Yet, after 10 years, you're still asking the question.
Yeah, because it kills me every day.
So it didn't?
It helped me ask the question. 10 years ago, I wouldn't ask the question.
Okay.
10 years ago, I would think my life is perfect. I don't think like that anymore.
Fair enough. And you have children? Yes? Okay. Beautiful. So, but you're still suffering. Would you like to not suffer?
Oh, I wish.
There is a process, we teach this in our program, and I would highly recommend you reach out to our office where you can stop suffering. It's not going to happen in a day, but it's not going to take 10 years either. And there are certain beliefs that you have that are causing you your pain, your suffering, and it's not your fault. However, it is healable on your part because you can't change anybody else. You can change yourself.
Okay.
And when you change yourself, you will find that living with somebody who is stoic and emotionally withdrawn does not mean that you cannot have a relationship with them. It's just going to be different.
I hear.
It's a grieving process and a healing process. That's what we do. And it sounds like a lot of the grieving, or some of the grieving, I should say anyways, I don't know where you were 10 years ago, but just based on your question, that you've already gone through a bunch of the grieving. And you know the 5 stages of grieving, yes?
I've heard of it, yeah.
So which stage of grieving do you need me to remind you them or no?
Yeah, please do.
It's the acronym DABDA. You can write it down. DABDA. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Which one do you think you're in?
Probably between anger and what's the next one?
Bargaining.
And bargaining.
I'm going to add one more.
I would say I'm in between. It's some days, it's like this. It's like swinging between both of them.
So there's one other one that you are in. Denial.
Why denial?
Because you still believe that he's the problem. See, denial, in my opinion, what I've discovered is denial is part of the grieving process, right? It's one of the 5.
Right.
So therefore, it's not a bad thing. It's got to be part of the grieving. What society calls denial, in my opinion, is pre-denial. It's clueless. Before 10 years ago, you were clueless.
I was clueless, yes, I agree. Yeah.
Now, you're in denial because you still haven't discovered what the real problem is. You think his inability to be emotionally, I'm trying to think of the right word, emotionally intimate, I guess is the only word that comes to mind, is the problem. That's not the problem. The problem is you're dealing with that. That's the problem, because that's the only solution. See, if we keep thinking that he is the problem, I didn't say that he doesn't have a problem. You heard you.
Right.
I didn't say that. I'm not saying that he doesn't. I'm not disputing that for a moment. I would never minimize your pain. and rationalize
Mhm.
it. That would just be so unfair. I'm not blaming you either if you
Mhm.
hear. I hope you're not taking it as such.
No, it's just like I'm at a point where like I feel like I'm plotting. I'm like
Yes,
I'm normal.
it's just that you are just looking in the wrong place. That's it. I compare it to, I have this, it was a cute joke that I heard many years ago, but I applied in our training because I do believe that it's really applicable, that somebody drives by and he sees an older gentleman looking for something at night, right?
Mhm.
Gets out of the car,
Mhm.
says, hello, excuse me, I see you're looking for something. You look a little lost. Can I help you? He says, yeah, I dropped my wallet. He goes, oh, let me help you. Where did you drop it? And he points over there. He says, over there in the field. And he looks at him a little perplexed and he says, I don't understand. You dropped it in the field. Why are you looking for it here on the street? And he responds, because there's light here, it's easier to see. It's a very profound lesson. A
Right.
lot of us will look where the light is because it's easier, even though we know deep down we're not going to be successful in finding the solution. You're just looking in the wrong place. You're looking on the street. We need to look in the field, in the darkness, and we will find healing there. That's the denial. Subtle, very subtle, right? You're not
Yeah,
blind
it
to
is.
what's going on. It's a very subtle difference. True?
It's true. It's true. But my question is, could I be like in a few different stages of the grieving?
Oh,
Let's say
100%.
denial, anger,
Absolutely.
and bargaining at the
Yeah,
same time?
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, they don't work. It's not like 1, 2, 3, 4. The beginning is denial and the end is acceptance. How you get from 1 to 5 can come in various ways. The goal is to get to acceptance. Because once you get to acceptance, will you hear when the other woman said, I don't remember her exact question, but she asked about, wow, it was so liberating to hear that it's me, that I don't have to change anybody else. Did you hear that question?
I listened to the question, but then I went off and then I came back on, so I didn't hear the end of the end. I didn't hear the end of the question.
Well, it's recorded. You'll hear it at a later time. But my point that the acceptance that it's on her was so freeing right away, because acceptance brings freedom. But you're not that far off. You're just looking in the wrong place.
So it's all about me, that I have to fix myself, in other words.
Well, you don't have to, only if you want to.
But what if I want and I feel like I don't have the energy for it?
That's a belief you have.
I feel like I'm so tired.
I hear you.
Tired of working on myself.
Absolutely. It's hard when you keep looking in the wrong place. It's frustrating. You
So
just
that's why I'm tired, because I'm looking in the wrong place.
That's it. Yeah, because you keep chopping away, and you're digging in the wrong hole. So you're not finding, oh my gosh, I can't. And they said, no, it's just 2 inches further. You just have to go to your left. I'm exhausted. The Abishter brought you here?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, he made me marry this person too.
No, I'm not talking about that part. I'm saying he brought you here?
Yes.
Okay. So you're ready for the solution means your soul is ready to be healed. If you're ready to work, call the office and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
You have the
good.
contact info?
Yeah, I have all the information, yeah.
But you're not the first person to come to me with this.
With this type of question?
No. Yeah. Not the first at all.
Okay.
And I've healed many with it. Same thing. It is challenging. It is frustrating. It's your journey.
Very challenging. Yeah.
Yes. No, it's not very challenging. You feel that it's very challenging.
I feel right now that it's very challenging.
Yes. But I'm telling you that it's not. It's just challenging. We're going to change the very challenging to challenging. It can be healed. Absolutely.
So I should just like reroute my thoughts.
And I want you to know
different
again,
direction.
I just want to validate again your frustration. It's real. I hope you don't feel that I'm criticizing you or
No,
diminishing.
I don't feel like that at all, because I know that I have to work on myself, and I'm doing work, and it's not that I'm just sitting on a chair and just like getting frustrated.
Oh, I'm sure not.
But it's just like, I think I'm more frustrated that he doesn't do any eye contact with the kids. It's like, sitting by a Shabbos meal and just like the kids are just like trying to get his attention, and he's looking all over the place and not at them. I'm like, I plot. I feel like I can't sit by the meal. I'll look out of the room.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. I hear you. It is. And as much as you want to hear it or not, he is suffering too. He doesn't even know how much he's suffering. If everything you're telling me is true, he's really, really suffering. And so are you.
Yeah.
It is treatable. 100%. I hope that was helpful.
It was very helpful. Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Okay, I have a friend in the hospital that's very, very, very sick now, and we do a Tehillim line for her. Why is it that I almost never have the energy to go onto the line to say Tehillim with the whole class?
When a person has been traumatized for at least 30 years,
Yeah.
the part that has been taken from you is trust. And when a person doesn't trust, it is extremely difficult to feel another person's pain.
Why is
And
that?
to put yourself into that predicament, and then you're between a rock and a hard place.
Right.
That on one hand, you really want to be there for your friend. On the other hand, you have so much anger inside of you that doing that is just too overwhelming, and you don't know where to go. And it's just causing more and more frustration where you want to be at a certain place. It's what we call emotional paralysis. You are paralyzed emotionally that you don't know which way to turn, because either way, either option is not good. To say the Tehillim is too painful. To not say it is feel so inferior and so alienated and so left out and so worthless. And it's just adding to what you're already going through. And it really sucks.
So that's why I'm avoiding.
You don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do.
No.
Because when I get the call, I'm like, I don't want to get that call. I don't want the
Of
call
course
to
not.
come in.
Because every time
I wish I wasn't home when the call comes
Yeah.
in. And then if I'm home and they're saying the Tehillim, I'm like, okay, I try to get a Tehillim and I sit down and I can't even open it.
No, you have those, what we call cognitive dissonance. You have two voices in your head fighting against each other without.
Always a conflict there. Always a conflict
Horrible. This is in your head 24 hours a day, every moment. I empathize with it. It's horrible. People who don't know what you're going through cannot appreciate the level of challenge. And some would say, what's the big deal? Just say one pasuk. And they go, you don't understand. I can't even open the book. I can't even open the Tehillim. What? I can't, and I can't not open the Tehillim. It's horrible. What do you use? And you don't have to answer me if you don't want to, as a distraction.
So Baruch Hashem, Hashem gave me a very large family, and I have a lot of work to do. A lot of cooking, and a lot of laundry, and a lot of shopping, and a million appointments.
So your distraction is adrenaline.
Adrenaline, yeah.
Yeah, you're addicted to adrenaline.
Yeah.
That's your distraction.
100%.
That's your coping mechanism.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what you use to function. And as much as it sounds extremely virtuous, and it is, it's still eating you up inside. And I want you to know that it doesn't have to be that way.
Meaning, like, what should I feel like when the phone
No,
call
no,
comes
no,
in?
no. There's no such what should. It's a process. It's a healing and grieving process. That's what I'm saying. I'm not going to cure you today, but I'm sure I've opened your mind to some ideas and thoughts. Correct or not?
100%. No, I feel like, okay, I'm not crazy if I don't say that to Helen.
Yeah.
It's like it makes sense. It makes sense.
How freeing is
it's not that I'm a bad person. It's not that I'm a selfish person.
Right.
And it's not that I don't want her to get out of the hospital. It's just I really can't do that.
No, you can't. Not right now. No.
No, not right now. No, not right now.
No. And the problem is the guilt that comes with the not doing it is just adding.
Yeah, but now you explained it to me, so most of the guilt went off now.
Beautiful. For today.
Yeah, I have to say, a lot of the guilt went off now. It's like it's not because I'm trying to be bad or selfish or anything. It's just part of the happenings.
How cool is that? 10 minutes and it's gone.
It's very, very very clear.
Okay, because you're willing to listen. Because you're in so much pain that you're willing to listen.
Willing to listen, and I'm trying to get better and better.
I know you are. I really do. I'll say it again. I really validate your struggle and your feeling. You must be an amazing, amazing mother and Bubby.
I try.
Oh, you don't try. You do it. And you just have to teach you to love yourself a little more.
You have to learn that a lot.
Yeah. Well, like I said, if you're interested to know more, reach out to the office. We'd be more than happy to talk to you and discuss
Mhm.
options, but that's what it sounds like you know,
Mhm.
you could benefit
Okay.
from your questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you for being here.
Okay.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and not
Thank you.
just listening, but really, being
Mhm.
active and interacting. Everybody here gains from your question, including myself. And I believe everybody here feels your pain. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good
Okay,
luck.
good night.
Okay, well, this concludes our second Mindful Monday. Really great stuff. Like I said, the other will be online tomorrow. It's online, but it'll be on our hotline. Please reach out to your friends and family, have them come. We are on a mission, as I stated, to help 100 million people. So we're getting there, one person at a time. If your question was not answered, reach out to the office. You can email us. We gave you all the contact information. Have a great night, everybody. Have a great week. And we will see you again. February 7th, our topic will be decision making. Okay. Thank you so much. Take care.